There are stories hidden between the lines of the Bible that few people know. Mysteries that have been kept for centuries, mentioned only briefly within the pages of Scripture. Today, we're diving into one of those fascinating stories, the tale of the man who walked with God and was taken to heaven without experiencing death. We're talking about an ancient book that was banned, hidden, and nearly lost forever. A book that speaks of angels descending to earth, giants who once ruled the world, and heavenly secrets revealed to humans. This is the story of the Book of Enoch, one of the most mysterious and controversial texts from antiquity. Though it's not part of the Bible as we know it today, it was highly regarded by many ancient Jews and early Christians. If you've never heard of it before, get ready for a surprising journey through a world where heaven and earth meet, where angels walk among men, and where the secrets of the universe are revealed to a special man named Enoch. When we open the book of Genesis, chapter 5, we find a list of patriarchs, the early leaders of humankind. There, in verse 18, we're introduced to Enoch. When Jared was 162 years old, he fathered Enoch. At first glance, he seems like just another name in a long genealogy. But if we keep reading, something stands out. In Genesis 5:21-24, the Bible tells us, when Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah for 300 years and had other sons and daughters. All the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This passage is like a hidden gem among the genealogies. While the Bible says of all the other patriarchs that they lived, had children, and died, Enoch's story is different. He didn't die. God took him. And notice how long he lived, exactly 365 years, the same number of days in a solar year. That doesn't seem like a random detail. It feels rich with symbolism, as if Enoch's life represented a full, perfect cycle. But what does it really mean to walk with God? The Bible uses this expression to describe a special kind of relationship, a deep, intimate communion with the Creator. It wasn't just about following commandments. It was living in constant companionship with God, like two friends walking side by side. Enoch cultivated this closeness for 300 years after the birth of his son Methuselah. Just imagine 3 centuries of walking daily with God. Centuries later, the New Testament gives us more insight into this extraordinary man. In Hebrews chapter 11, the great hall of faith, verse 5 says, "By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found, because God had taken him. Now, before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God." Here we learn that it was because of his faith that Enoch experienced this unique fate. He pleased God to such a degree that he was spared from death. The Greek word translated as taken up literally means transferred to another place. Enoch was physically relocated from this life into God's presence without ever dying. But there's yet another intriguing reference to Enoch in the New Testament. In the book of Jude, verses 14 and 15 say, "It was also about these that Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This passage is remarkable because Jude is quoting a prophecy from Enoch that isn't recorded anywhere in the Old Testament. Where did this quote come from? Jude is directly citing the Book of Enoch, a text not included in the Bible we have today. This shows that Jude, one of the early Christian leaders, knew and valued this mysterious book. For centuries, the Book of Enoch was like a lost treasure. Though widely read by early Christians and mentioned by several church fathers, over time it faded from view in the Western world. For nearly 1,000 years it vanished completely, as if it had been erased from history. The story of this ancient book's rediscovery begins in Ethiopia, home to one of the oldest Christian traditions in the world. In 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce set out on a journey to this remote part of Africa. Bruce wasn't searching for religious treasures. His main goal was to discover the source of the Nile. But during his stay in Ethiopia, he came across something as valuable as any material treasure. 3 complete copies of the Book of Enoch, preserved in a language called Ge'ez, the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This discovery was groundbreaking. Bruce brought one of the copies back to Europe, and in 1821 it was finally translated into English. For the first time in centuries, Western readers could explore this ancient text that had deeply influenced early Judaism and Christianity. But the story doesn't end there. In 1947, young Bedouin shepherds were searching for a lost goat among the rocky hills near the Dead Sea, in the region of Qumran. One of them threw a stone into a cave and heard the sound of breaking pottery. Curious, he entered the cave and found ancient jars containing rolled-up scrolls. This accidental discovery turned out to be one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the more than 900 manuscripts uncovered in the 11 Qumran caves, archaeologists found fragments of the Book of Enoch, written in Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke. These fragments dated back to around 200 BCE, proving that the book wasn't a medieval invention, but a genuinely ancient text, known and respected by the Jewish community at Qumran well before the birth of Christ. Why did the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserve this book when other traditions left it out? Ethiopia has one of the oldest Christian traditions in the world, dating back to the 4th century AD. While Western and Eastern Christianity underwent numerous reforms and church councils that decided which books should be included in the Bible, the Ethiopian Church, geographically isolated to a degree, maintained a broader collection of sacred texts, including the Book of Enoch, which they call 1 Enoch, or the Ethiopian Enoch. To Ethiopians, this book has always been part of their scripture, read during religious services and studied by priests and scholars. They didn't preserve it as a curiosity, but as an inspired text that holds important truths about God, angels, and the destiny of humanity. But why isn't the Book of Enoch in the Bible most Christians use today? The reasons are complex and trace back to decisions made in the early centuries of the Church. Although the book was popular and influential, several factors led to its exclusion from the official canon of Scripture. First, it wasn't actually written by Enoch, who lived thousands of years earlier. It's what we call a pseudepigraphal text, written by later authors using the name of an ancient figure to lend the work authority. Second, it contains elements that some early church leaders found problematic: elaborate stories about angels, cosmological details, and apocalyptic visions that went beyond what other biblical texts described. The final decisions about which books would be included in the Bible were made across several church councils in the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. Despite its earlier influence, the Book of Enoch didn't make it into most canonical lists. Still, its content continued to influence both Christian and Jewish thought, even if not officially recognized as scripture by most traditions. The Book of Enoch transports us to a world where the boundary between heaven and earth was thin, a world where angelic beings interacted directly with humanity, and not always for the better. In chapter 6 of the Book of Enoch, we find a fascinating story that dramatically expands on a cryptic verse from the Bible. In Genesis 6:2, the Bible briefly says, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose." Who were these sons of God? The Book of Enoch gives a detailed answer. According to Enoch, these sons of God were actually angels, referred to as the Watchers, because their original role was to observe and oversee God's creation. The book tells us that 200 of these angels, led by Semjaza, descended upon Mount Hermon, a mountain at the border of modern-day Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. In chapter 6, verses 3 to 8, we read, "And Semjaza, being their leader, said to them, I fear that you will not agree to do this deed, and I alone will have to pay the penalty for this great sin. Then they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves together by a mutual curse, not to abandon this plan, but to carry it out. So they all swore together and bound themselves with a mutual curse." This passage shows us something important. The Watchers knew they were breaking a divine law. They understood that by leaving their heavenly realm and taking human women, they were committing a forbidden act. It wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate rebellion against God's established order. But why did these angels do it? The Book of Enoch suggests that they were drawn by the beauty of human women, but also hints at something deeper, a desire to experience earthly life with all its sensations and freedoms, even if it meant abandoning their divine purpose. Names of these angelic leaders are given in the text. Besides Semjaza, there is Azazel, who would later become a major figure in Jewish tradition as a symbol of evil. In Leviticus 16:8, we see a possible reference to Azazel in the Day of Atonement, ritual where a goat is sent to Azazel into the wilderness, symbolically carrying the sins of the people. Some scholars see a connection between that passage and the story told in the Book of Enoch. The oath that the angels swore to one another on Mount Hermon is one of the book's most dramatic moments. They bound themselves together, knowing that punishment would be terrible if any of them acted alone. There's something deeply tragic about this pact. Heavenly beings, created to serve God, conspiring together in rebellion against his plan. Mount Hermon, meant to be a place of natural beauty and divine praise, becomes the site of a cosmic mutiny. What happened when these celestial beings united with women on earth? The Book of Enoch describes catastrophic consequences of this forbidden union. In chapter 7, verses 1 to 2, it says, "And they took wives for themselves, each choosing one for himself. And they began to go into them, and to defile themselves with them. And the women conceived and bore great giants, whose height was 3,000 cubits. This union between angels and humans produced a race of giants known as the Nephilim. The Bible briefly mentions these beings in Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Book of Enoch expands this brief mention, describing the Nephilim as colossal beings. 3,000 cubits would be around 400 meters, clearly a literary hyperbole meant to emphasize their supernatural size. More important than their physical stature, though, was their hybrid nature, neither fully angelic nor fully human. They represented a rupture in the divine order of creation. These giants were not peaceful. According to the Book of Enoch, chapter 7, verses 3 to 5, they consumed all the labor of men until it became impossible to feed them. Then the giants turned against them and began to devour mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts, and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. The violence of the Nephilim is described in terrifying terms. They not only consumed every resource humans produced, but eventually began devouring humans themselves. It's a picture of creation spiraling out of control. Beings that were never meant to exist, bringing chaos and destruction upon the world. This nightmare of violence and terror drove humanity to cry out for help. The Book of Enoch, chapter 8, verse 4 recounts, "And as men perished, their outcry went up to heaven. This cry reached the ears of God and the faithful angels who had remained in heaven." In Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 7, the Bible hints that This corruption was one of the reasons for the flood. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. So the Lord said, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created." The book of Enoch offers a deeper explanation for this great wickedness mentioned in Genesis. It wasn't just human moral failure, it was the direct result of angelic interference in the natural order. The Nephilim brought a level of violence and destruction that exceeded human capacity, representing a fundamental corruption of creation that needed to be purged. Beyond their physical union with human women, the Book of Enoch reveals another layer of the Watcher's transgression. They taught humanity secret knowledge that was never meant to leave heaven. In chapter 8, verses 1 to 3, the book details, "And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and how to work them. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cutting. And Maros taught the resolving of enchantments. Barakijal taught astrology. Kokabel taught the constellations. Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel the signs of the earth. Shamsil the signs of the sun. And Sariel the course of the moon." This passage reveals something fascinating. The Watchers didn't just physically unite with humanity, they transferred divine knowledge that fundamentally reshaped human society. Each angel had a specialty, a unique celestial skill they passed on to humans. Azazel, named as one of the chief leaders, taught metallurgy and the crafting of weapons. While this knowledge might seem neutral, metal tools can be useful for agriculture and peaceful purposes. The text highlights its military applications: swords, knives, shields, and armor. In other words, Azazel taught humans how to kill each other more effectively. Other angels shared equally problematic knowledge. Through Semjaza's enchantments and magic, humans began manipulating spiritual forces far beyond their understanding. Barakijal's astrology turned people's eyes to worship the heavens instead of their creator. Even knowledge of plants and herbs, potentially healing and beneficial, was twisted into poison and magical brews. In chapter 8, verse 1, the text also mentions that the angels taught women the beautifying of the eyelids and the use of precious stones and all kinds of dyes, so that the world was altered. This marks the introduction of cosmetics and adornments, not as innocent expressions of beauty, but as tools for seduction and manipulation. These teachings rapidly transformed human society, but not for the better. In chapter 8, verse 2, we read, "And there was great wickedness and much fornication, and they went astray, and all their ways became corrupt." The image that emerges is one of premature technological and spiritual advancement. The knowledge itself wasn't inherently evil. Many of these teachings would eventually become core parts of human civilization. The problem was that this knowledge was received without the necessary spiritual maturity or moral wisdom, and without the natural progression of discovery that would have allowed for healthier integration into society. It's an ancient story, with strikingly modern echoes. The rise of powerful technology without a corresponding rise in ethical and spiritual development can lead to disaster. Humanity was handed powerful tools without the wisdom to wield them, and the result was violence, manipulation, and widespread corruption. This element of the Book of Enoch, the transfer of forbidden heavenly knowledge, offers a unique perspective on the nature of human understanding. Not all knowledge is beneficial in all circumstances. There is a right time for every discovery, and knowledge obtained too early or from the wrong sources can do more harm than good. The story also suggests that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Humans learned to work metal, use medicinal herbs, and observe the skies, all useful skills, but they lacked the moral discernment to use them for good. The result was a society plagued by violence, manipulation, and deep corruption, As the earth was being corrupted by the fallen angels and their giant offspring, the Creator watched with sorrow. It was at this point that he chose a man for a special mission. Enoch, who already walked in close communion with God, received a unique calling. In the book of Enoch, chapter 12, verses 1 to 4, we read how it all began. Before these things happened, Enoch was hidden, and none of the children of men knew where he was hidden or what had become of him. His activities during his life were with the watchers and the holy ones. And I, Enoch, was blessing the great Lord and King of eternity, and behold, the watchers called me. God had preserved Enoch from the evil spreading across the world. While the rebellious angels were teaching humans forbidden knowledge and their giant offspring were terrorizing the earth, Enoch was kept in a safe place, in communion with the faithful angels. But there came a moment when he received a mission that would change his life forever. In chapter 12, verses 4 to 6, we see the divine calling. Enoch, scribe of righteousness, go and declare to the watchers of heaven who have abandoned the high heaven, the holy and eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women. Tell them, you shall have no peace. Just imagine how Enoch must have felt. A mere man called to deliver a message of judgment to powerful celestial beings. It would be like being asked to confront kings and generals. But Enoch had walked with God for so long that he had the courage needed for such a task. When the rebellious angels realized they were under divine judgment, they pleaded with Enoch to intercede on their behalf. In chapter 13, verses 4 to 5, they say, "Plead for us so that we may find rest." They were terrified of the punishment they knew they deserved, and they hoped Enoch could obtain forgiveness for them. Enoch agreed to try. He withdrew to a solitary place to pray for the fallen angels. Chapter 13, verses 7 to 8 describes, "Then I departed and sat by the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, to the southwest of Hermon. I read their petition until I fell asleep. And behold, I had a dream, and visions came upon me. In those visions, while he slept, Enoch was spiritually taken into the presence of God. Trembling, he presented the request of the fallen angels. But the divine response was clear and firm. In chapter 14, verses 4 to 7, God declares, "You must say to the watchers of heaven who sent you to intercede for them, it is you who should be interceding for humans, not humans for you. Why did you leave the high, holy, and eternal heaven, lie with women, defile yourselves with the daughters of men, take them as wives, and act like the children of earth, bringing forth giant offspring?" God's answer left no room for mercy. These angels had completely reversed the natural order. Instead of protecting humanity, as was their duty, they had corrupted it. Now Enoch, a human, had to bring the message of condemnation to these fallen beings. With this burden on his shoulders, Enoch returned to fulfill his mission. In chapter 15, verses 1 to 2, he recounts, "And he answered and said to me with his voice, Listen, do not fear, Enoch, righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Come here and hear my voice. And go, say to the watchers of heaven who sent you to intercede for them, you should be interceding for humans, not humans for you." Thus Enoch became a mediator between heaven and earth, delivering the divine message both to the fallen angels and to humankind, who needed to be warned of the coming judgment. It was a heavy responsibility, but Enoch carried it out faithfully. Enoch's story takes an even more astonishing turn when he is taken on a celestial journey unlike anything any human had ever experienced. This was not a simple dream or vision. It was a real physical ascent into the heavens while he was still alive. In the book of Enoch, chapter 14, verses 8 to 9, he describes the beginning of this incredible journey. "And behold, in the visions, clouds called out to me, and mist summoned me. The course of the stars and the lightning sped me on and pushed me forward, and the winds in the vision made me fly and lifted me upward and carried me into heaven. Enoch was carried by winds and clouds, rising higher and higher, passing through the stars until he reached the celestial realms. During this extraordinary journey, he was guided by angels who showed him the mysteries of the universe, things no human eye had ever seen. As he was taken through the heavens, Enoch discovered that there wasn't just one heaven, but 7 celestial realms, each with its own characteristics and purpose. In chapter 71, verse 1, he says, "It came to pass after this that my spirit was taken up and ascended into the heavens." In the first heaven, Enoch saw vast reservoirs of snow, clouds, and dew. In the second, he found chained angels awaiting judgment, some of the very watchers who had sinned. The third heaven contained both paradise, a garden of indescribable beauty for the righteous, and a place of punishment for the wicked. Continuing his ascent, in the fourth heaven, Enoch observed the orderly movement of the sun, moon, and stars. In the fifth, he encountered the Grigori, watchers who had not joined the rebellion but were deeply sorrowful for their fallen brethren. The sixth heaven was inhabited by angels who managed natural phenomena and human souls. And finally, in the seventh heaven, the highest and holiest, Enoch beheld the very throne of God. This vision of the divine throne is one of the most breathtaking moments in the book. In chapter 14, verses 18 to 20, Enoch describes, "And I looked, and saw a high throne, and its appearance was like crystal, and the great glory was seated upon it, and his garment was brighter than the sun, and whiter than any snow." The beauty and majesty of this vision were almost unbearable to human senses. Enoch continues in verse 24, "And I fell on my face, and all my body melted, and my spirit was transformed." In the presence of divine glory, Enoch was completely changed. During his heavenly journey, Enoch also witnessed the countless armies of angels who serve God. In chapter 71, verses 7 to 8, he reports, "And around me were seraphim, cherubim, and ophanim. These are the ones who do not sleep but guard the throne of his glory." Enoch learned that there are different categories of angels, each with specific roles in the divine order. The seraphim continuously sang praises before the throne. The cherubim served as guardians of holy places. The ophanim, or wheels, were beings connected to the movement of God's throne, as also described by the prophet Ezekiel. There were angels in charge of natural phenomena, controlling the weather, the seasons, the rivers, and the seas. Other angels recorded human actions in celestial books. Some served as messengers, bringing the divine word to earth, while others acted as guardians of nations and individuals. Enoch witnessed the perfect order and harmony of the heavenly realm, a stark contrast to the chaos and violence that had spread across the earth after the rebellion of the Watchers. This experience prepared him to better understand the judgment that was to come. After beholding the glory of the heavens, Enoch received the full revelation concerning the judgment that awaited the fallen angels and their offspring. This judgment would occur in 2 phases, a temporary punishment that had already begun and a final condemnation at the end of time. In the book of Enoch, chapter 10, verses 4 to 6, God commands the archangel Raphael, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and open the desert that is in Dudael, and throw him in, and place upon him rough and jagged stones, and cover him with darkness, and let him dwell there forever, and cover his face so that he may not see light." This marks the beginning of the temporary imprisonment of the rebellious angels. The leaders of the rebellion, such as Azazel and Semjaza, were the first to be captured and confined. They weren't merely imprisoned, they were cast into deep abysses, covered in darkness, where they would remain until the final day of judgment. As for the other watchers, chapter 10, verses 11 to 14, describes their fate. "And the Lord said to Michael, Go, bind Semjaza and his companions who have united with women. When all their sons have slain one another, and when they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, until the day of their judgment and end, until the eternal judgment is accomplished. The imprisonment of the rebellious angels would be long. 70 generations symbolizes an extremely extended period. During this time, they would be forced to witness, powerless, the destruction of their descendants, the Nephilim. Indeed, the judgment upon the giants would be relentless. In chapter 10, verse 9, God commands, "And to Gabriel he said, Go against the bastards, the reprobates, the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the watchers from among men." The giants, who had terrorized humanity with their violence, would now face their own destruction. The book describes how the Nephilim, unable to find enough sustenance for their enormous bodies, began to devour humans and eventually turned on each other. In chapter 10, verse 15, it reads, "Destroy all the spirits of lust and the children of the watchers, because they oppressed mankind." But the judgment would not be limited to the fallen angels and their children. Corruption had spread so widely that the entire earth had become tainted. Here the book of Enoch connects directly with the story of the flood as told in the Bible. In chapter 10, verses 1 to 3, God sends the archangel Uriel to Noah. "Go to Noah and tell him in my name, hide yourself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, for the whole earth shall be destroyed." The great flood would be the means of purification for a world utterly corrupted. This is the same story we find in Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 13. "Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth." The flood would wipe out the physical offspring of the watchers, cleansing the earth of their corrupting influence. But this would be only a temporary judgment. The final judgment was reserved for the end of time. In chapter 10, verses 13 to 14, the book describes this final judgment. "In those days they shall be led to the abyss of fire, to torment, and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whoever is condemned will be bound with them from then on, until the end of all generations." The eternal condemnation of the fallen angels is a theme echoed in the New Testament. In Jude chapter 1, verse 6, we read, "And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but abandoned their own dwelling, he has kept in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day." Thus the book of Enoch provides a detailed explanation for the brief reference to fallen angels in Jude, showing how the tradition surrounding these rebellious celestial beings influenced early Christian thought. One of the most fascinating sections of the book of Enoch is the so-called Book of Parables, which spans chapters 37 to 71. In this part, Enoch receives visions about the final judgment and the role of a mysterious figure called the Elect One, or Son of Man. In chapter 37, verse 1, Enoch introduces this section, the second vision which he saw, the vision of wisdom that Enoch, son of Jared, son of Mahalalel, son of Canaan, son of Enosh, son of Seth, son of Adam, saw. Immediately afterward he announces that he will share the 3 parables he received in his heavenly visions. The first parable, covering chapters 38 to 44, deals with the judgment of sinners and the blessedness of the righteous. Enoch sees how sinners will be removed from the face of the earth, while the righteous will dwell with the Son of Man. In chapter 38, verses 2 to 3, he says, "When the righteous one appears before the eyes of the righteous, whose works are weighed by the Lord of spirits, where will be the dwelling of the sinners, and where the resting place of those who have denied the Lord of spirits?" The second parable in chapters 45 to 57 focuses specifically on the elect one, a messianic figure who will judge the world. In chapter 46, verses 1 to 3, Enoch describes, "There I saw someone who had a head of days, hair white like wool, and his head was white like wool. And with him was another whose countenance had the appearance of a man, and his face was full of grace like one of the holy angels. And I asked the angel who went with me and showed me all the hidden things about that Son of Man, who he was, where he came from, and why he walked with the head of days." Here we see a striking depiction of this divine figure, the Son of Man, who has existed since before creation itself. In chapter 48, verses 2 to 3, we read, "At that hour that Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits, and his name was pronounced before the head of days. Yes, before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of heaven were made, his name was uttered in the presence of the Lord of Spirits." This portrayal of the pre-existent Son of Man bears remarkable parallels to the New Testament's depiction of Jesus. When Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man, he was possibly drawing upon this tradition that already existed. Within the Judaism of his time, known through the book of Enoch, the third parable, spanning chapters 58 to 69, continues to describe the final judgment and the joy of the elect. In chapter 58, verses 1 to 3, Enoch writes, "I saw the depths of the earth, and I saw the treasure of all blessings and righteousness, and I saw all the chosen spirits adorned like fire. And there stood the righteous one with the Lord of Spirits, mighty in all the secrets of righteousness." This section of the book also contains a full revelation of the names of the fallen angels and their specific transgressions. Chapter 69 lists dozens of angelic names, each associated with a particular sin or forbidden knowledge. This list expands upon the shorter narrative found earlier in the book, providing a complete catalogue of the angelic rebellion. The parables conclude with detailed prophecies about the fate of both the righteous and the wicked. In chapter 62, verses 13 to 16, we read, "And the righteous and the elect shall be saved on that day, and the Lord of Spirits shall abide over them, and with that Son of Man they shall eat, lie down, and rise up forever and ever. And the righteous and elect shall be lifted from the earth, and they shall become angels in heaven." The contrast with the destiny of the sinners is stark. In chapter 62, verses 9 to 10, "All the kings, the mighty, the exalted, and those who rule the earth shall fall down before him on their faces, and worship and place their hope in that Son of Man. For from the beginning the Son of Man was hidden, and the Most High kept him in the presence of his power, and revealed him to the elect." This section of the book of Enoch presents a vivid apocalyptic vision, in which evil is ultimately judged and the righteous are rewarded. It's a message of hope amid chaos. Though the earth had been filled with violence and corruption because of the fallen angels, a day would come when divine justice would be perfectly and permanently established. One of the most curious and unique parts of the book of Enoch is the so-called Astronomical book, which spans chapters 72 to 82. Unlike the other sections that focus on angels, judgment, and apocalyptic visions, this part is centered on the movements of celestial bodies and the nature of the calendar. In chapter 72, verses 1 to 2, Enoch introduces this section, the book of the course of the heavenly luminaries, the relationships of each one according to their classes, their dominions, and their times, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, as Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, and who is their guide, showed me all their regulations exactly as they are. Here we find the archangel Uriel in a special role. He is the angel in charge of the celestial bodies and the guide who teaches Enoch the mysteries of the cosmos. During his heavenly journey, Enoch receives detailed knowledge about how the sun, moon, and stars move across the skies. One of the most fascinating aspects is the description of a 364-day solar calendar. In chapter 72, verses 32 to 33, we read, "On that day, the sun comes forth from that second portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and enters the third portal. And thus the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day is exactly 10 parts, and the night 8 parts. This 364-day calendar, exactly 52 weeks, was divided into 4 seasons of 91 days each, 13 weeks, with special days marking the transitions between seasons. It was a simpler system than the 354-day lunar calendar or the 365.25-day solar calendar we use today, as it maintained a consistent 52-week structure. For Enoch, this calendar was not merely a human convention, but part of the very divine order of creation. In chapter 82, verses 4 to 7, he warns, "Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all those who walk in the path of righteousness, and do not sin as the sinners in counting all their days, in which the sun traverses the heavens. For the sinners, the years shall be shortened, and there will be those who go astray with respect to the moons, and the sun, and the stars, and all the heavenly order." Following the correct calendar was seen as an act of faithfulness to God. Using an incorrect calendar meant deviating from the order set by the Creator. This was a significant issue for many ancient Jewish groups, including the Qumran community, which used a solar calendar similar to the one described in the book of Enoch. Beyond the calendar, the book details the laws that govern the celestial bodies. In chapter 73, for example, Enoch explains the moon's movements and phases. In chapter 75, he discusses the stars and their positions. In chapter 76, he describes the 12 portals of the winds at the ends of the earth. All this astronomical knowledge is presented as divine revelation, not human discovery. In chapter 80, verses 1 to 2, Uriel says to Enoch, "Observe, Enoch, the heavenly tablets, and read what is written upon them, and note every individual fact. And I read the heavenly tablets, and I saw all that was written on them, and I recorded everything for myself. The heavenly tablets were like a divine book where the entire order of the universe was recorded." Enoch was given the unique privilege of reading these tablets and learning the secrets of the cosmos straight from the divine source. Uriel's role as astronomical guide is emphasized repeatedly. In chapter 79, verses 6 to 7, we read, "And Uriel showed me 12 openings of the portals of the sun in the sky, through which the rays of the sun emerge, and into which it sets." Uriel is not merely a messenger. He is a teacher who reveals to Enoch the intricate patterns of celestial motion. The emphasis on understanding the seasons and lunar cycles also served a practical purpose for the religious calendar. In chapter 75, verses 1 to 3, Enoch says, "The leaders of the heads of thousands, who are in charge of all creation and all the stars, are also associated with the 4 intercalary days, and they are inseparable from their position. And these serve the 4 days that are not counted in the calculation of the year." These 4 intercalary days were special days added to complete the year, ensuring that religious festivals would always be celebrated on the same days of the week, year after year, a major concern for many ancient Jewish communities. The precision and regularity of the celestial body's movements were seen as a testament to the wisdom and power of the Creator. In chapter 82, verse 3, Enoch declares, "Blessed are all those who understand the correct course of the stars and all their paths in the heavens, so that they are not destroyed or perish." Astronomical knowledge wasn't just scientific, it was spiritual. Understanding the heavenly cycles meant better understanding the ways of God. For ancient readers of the book of Enoch, The universe wasn't a purposeless machine, but a divinely ordered creation, where every star and planet followed the path set by the Creator. After receiving great visions of the heavens and the judgment of the fallen angels, Enoch had two more important dreams. These dreams are recorded in the part of the Book of Enoch known as the Book of Dreams, found in chapters 83 to 90. In these chapters, Enoch recounts what he saw concerning the future of humanity from the flood to the end of time. In the first dream, described in chapter 83, Enoch has a terrifying vision of the coming flood. He narrates in Enoch 83, 3-5, "I saw in my vision the sky being cast down and falling upon the earth. And when it fell to the earth, I saw the earth swallowed up in a great abyss. And I lifted up my voice to cry out and said, 'The earth is being destroyed.'" The vision disturbed Enoch so deeply that he rushed to tell his grandfather Methuselah. Enoch explains in chapter 83, 7-8, "My grandfather Methuselah came to me while I was lying down and said, 'What is wrong with you, my son, and why do you cry out like this?' Then I told him all the visions that I had seen." The second dream, much longer and more detailed, spans chapters 85 to 90. In this extraordinary vision, Enoch sees the entire history of humanity portrayed through different animals. It's like watching an epic film of the past and future, but with animals taking the place of people. Enoch explains in chapter 85, 3-4, "Before I took a wife, I, Enoch, had a vision while lying on my bed, and behold, a bull came out of the earth, and that bull was white. And after it came a heifer, and with her came two calves, one was black and the other red." In this animal vision, each type of animal represents different groups of people. The white bull was Adam, the heifer was Eve, the black calf was Cain, and the red one was Abel. As the vision unfolded, Enoch witnessed how human history played out, with bulls, cows, sheep, and many other animals representing various people and nations. A key part of the vision shows the flood and Noah's salvation. In chapter 89, 1-9, Enoch describes, "And one of those four went to that white bull and taught him a secret. And I saw until all kinds of cattle, bulls, rams, and sheep perished and sank and were swallowed by the water. The white bull who received the secret was Noah, the one to whom God revealed how to build the ark. The animals that perished in the water represented all of humanity that died in the flood." The vision continues with the story of Israel. In chapter 89, verse 10, Enoch sees that white bull that became a man came out of the ship along with the three bulls. This symbolized Noah and his three sons beginning a new life after the flood. As time progressed in the vision, Enoch saw sheep, representing the Israelites, being attacked by wolves, bears, and other beasts, symbolizing enemy nations. He saw the birth of Moses, portrayed as a sheep that turned into a man to lead the flock. He saw the construction of the tabernacle, the conquest of the promised land, the era of the judges and kings, and even the exile. At the end of the vision, Enoch sees something wonderful, the coming of the Messiah. In chapter 90, 37-38, he describes, "And I saw that a white bull was born with large horns, and all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the heavens feared him and pleaded with him constantly. And I saw until all their generations were transformed, and they all became white bulls." This white bull with large horns represents the Messiah, who will bring peace and transformation to all creation. All the animals once divided and in conflict now become white bulls, symbols of purity and unity in the new age ushered in by the Messiah. The vision ends with an image of a new earth and a new temple. In chapter 90, verse 29, Enoch sees, "And they began to build a house in the place of that first one which had been removed." This house represents the new temple in the Messianic age, a place of perfect worship for all peoples. These two apocalyptic visions of Enoch reveal that despite all the evil and suffering in the world, God has a plan to restore all things. Evil will be judged, and in the end, good will triumph through the Messiah who is to come. The final section of the book of Enoch is known as the Epistle of Enoch, covering chapters 91 to 108. Unlike the other parts, which consist mainly of visions and heavenly revelations, this section contains many moral teachings and exhortations that Enoch left for his children and for future generations. The book recounts that, sensing his time on earth was drawing to an end, Enoch gathered his family to share important life lessons and prophecies about the future. In chapter 91, 1-3, we read, "And now, my son Methuselah, call to me all your brothers, and gather to me all the sons of your mother, for the word is calling me, and the Spirit is poured out upon me, so that I may show you everything that will happen until eternity." Enoch begins with simple yet profound advice on how to live a righteous life. In chapter 94, verses 1-3, he says, "And now, my children, I say to you, love righteousness and walk in it, for the paths of righteousness are worthy of acceptance, but the paths of unrighteousness shall be destroyed and disappear. Therefore I say to you, the righteous, do not walk in evil ways, nor in unrighteousness, nor in the paths of death." His words are clear and direct, like a father speaking to his children. He warns against greed, pride, violence, and deceit. In chapter 95, verse 4, Enoch declares, "Woe to you who are rich, for you have trusted in your riches. You will lose your wealth because you did not remember the Most High in the days of your prosperity." In many ways, these moral exhortations resemble the writings of the biblical prophets and the book of Proverbs. They are practical teachings, grounded in divine wisdom, guiding people to choose the path of righteousness that leads to life, rather than the path of wickedness that leads to destruction. After these moral teachings, Enoch presents a vision of world history divided into 10 symbolic weeks. In chapter 93, and continuing in chapter 91, verses 12-17, he describes how all of human history will unfold in 10 major periods. He begins, "And Enoch began to speak from the books and said, I was born the 7th in the first week, while judgment and righteousness still endured." Here, Enoch identifies himself as living in the first week of history. The second week represents the time after the flood, when evil would rise again. The third week marks the calling of Abraham. The fourth week, the law would be given to Moses. The fifth week would witness the construction of the temple. In the sixth week, the temple would be destroyed and the people exiled. The seventh week would see a wicked generation arise, but the righteous would be chosen. In the eighth week, the righteous would be given swords to carry out judgment on the oppressors, and a new house, temple, would be built. During the 9th week, just judgment would be revealed to the whole world. And finally, in the 10th week, the final judgment would take place. This vision of the 10 weeks is one of the earliest attempts to divide human history into distinct epochs, each with its own character and role in the divine plan. It's a way of showing that history is not random, but follows a course designed by God from the very beginning. The climax of this plan is the final judgment and the new creation. In chapter 91, verses 16-17, Enoch prophesies, "And the first part of heaven shall pass away, and a new heaven shall appear. And after that there shall be many weeks without number forever, in which the righteous shall practice righteousness, and all sinners shall seek the path of righteousness." The image of a new heaven, replacing the old one, symbolizes a complete renewal of creation. After this, Enoch envisions an endless future where righteousness prevails eternally. It's a vision of hope that transcends present struggles. For those faithful who persevere in righteousness, Enoch promises eternal reward. In chapter 104, verses 2 to 4, he declares, "Take hope, you righteous, for sinners shall soon perish before you. Do not fear the downfall of sinners, for you shall have no part in it." And in chapter 104, verses 6 to 7, he offers a beautiful promise. "Do not be troubled if your soul descends to Sheol, the realm of the dead, in sorrow, and if your body did not receive during your life what your goodness deserved. When you die, sinners will say of you, 'How do the righteous die? What benefit did they gain from their deeds?' But it is not so. Sinners die in disgrace, but for you who fear the Lord, light, grace, and peace shall shine." These words offered comfort to the ancient readers of the Book of Enoch, many of whom faced persecution for their faith. The message was clear. Even when the righteous suffer and the wicked seem to thrive, God sees all, and in the end, he will reward faithfulness and judge injustice. The epistle concludes with a promise to Enoch himself. In chapter 108, verse 12, the book ends with these words, "And I called him by his name and said to him, 'Be brave, Enoch, do not fear. The Lord of spirits has appointed you forever, and power is with you.'" After delivering so many divine messages to humanity, Enoch receives the assurance that his work was not in vain. The Book of Enoch had a massive impact on early Jewish thought, especially between the 2nd century BCE and the 1st century CE. Although it wasn't included in the official Jewish scriptural canon, it was highly respected and widely read by various Jewish groups of the time. One of the places where the Book of Enoch was most valued was in the Qumran communities near the Dead Sea. It was there that the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, including Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch. The community living in Qumran was likely made up of the Essenes, a Jewish sect known for their austere lifestyle and commitment to spiritual purity. For the Essenes, the Book of Enoch wasn't just another religious text. It was nearly as important as the biblical books themselves. They copied and studied it with great care. In Cave 4 at Qumran, archaeologists found at least 5 different copies of the Book of Enoch, showing how popular it was among them. Why was this book so important to them? Partly because the Essenes saw themselves as the sons of light, engaged in the spiritual battle against the sons of darkness. Enoch's story of fallen angels, evil spiritual forces, and a coming final judgment fit perfectly with their worldview. Moreover, the 364-day solar calendar described in Enoch's Astronomical book matched the one the Essenes followed, unlike the lunar calendar used by the Jerusalem temple. This was a major point of religious distinction. The Essenes believed they were following the true divine calendar as revealed to Enoch. The Book of Enoch also had a major influence on the development of Jewish angelology and demonology, that is, beliefs about angels and demons. Before this book, the Old Testament only mentioned angels occasionally, without offering much detail about their nature or organization. The Book of Enoch changed that, giving names to dozens of angels, describing their specific roles and organizing them into hierarchies. For example, in Enoch chapter 20, verses 1 to 7, the book lists 7 chief archangels, and these are the names of the holy angels who watch: Uriel, one of the holy angels who is over thunder and terror; Raphael, one of the holy angels who is over the spirits of men; Raguel, one of the holy angels who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries; Michael, one of the holy angels who is set over the best part of mankind and over chaos; Sarachael, one of the holy angels who is set over the spirits of the children of men who sin in the spirit; Gabriel, one of the holy angels who is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim; Remiel, one of the holy angels whom God set over those who rise. This elaborate angelology deeply shaped later Jewish thought. The names Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel became especially significant in Jewish tradition and are still mentioned in prayers and religious texts today. Similarly, the Book of Enoch developed ideas about demons and evil spirits in much more detail than earlier biblical texts. The story of the Watchers who rebelled against God became the foundation for many later traditions regarding the origin of demons. The book also made major contributions to Jewish eschatology, beliefs about the end times and the ultimate fate of humanity. In earlier biblical Judaism, ideas about the afterlife and final judgment were relatively simple, but the Book of Enoch presents elaborate visions of heaven and hell, final judgment, and the resurrection of the dead. In chapter 51, verses 1 to 2, for instance, the book speaks of resurrection, and in those days the earth shall give back that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol shall give back that which it has received, and destruction shall give back what it owes. And he shall choose the righteous and holy from among them, for the day has arrived when they shall be saved. This vision of a final judgment in which the dead are raised, the righteous are rewarded, and the wicked are punished, became central for many Jewish groups during the Second Temple period. These ideas also laid the groundwork for similar concepts that would later become significant in Christianity. Perhaps the most important contribution of the Book of Enoch to early Jewish thought was its explanation for the origin of evil in the world. This was a difficult issue for Jewish monotheism. If there is only one God, and he is perfectly good, then where does evil come from? The Book of Enoch offers an answer. Much of the evil in the human world comes from the corrupting influence of the fallen angels and their teachings of forbidden knowledge to humans. In chapter 10, verse 8, God says of Azazel, "The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin." This explanation helped many Jews reconcile the existence of evil with belief in a good and all-powerful God. Evil didn't come from God, but from beings who rebelled against his will and corrupted his creation. This idea had a profound impact on Jewish theological thought regarding the problem of evil. The impact of the Book of Enoch wasn't limited to Judaism. When Christianity emerged in the 1st century, many early Christians were also familiar with and valued this book. In fact, echoes of Enoch's stories and ideas can be found in several places throughout the New Testament. The clearest and most direct influence appears in the short letter of Jude in the New Testament. In Jude, verses 14 and 15, we find an explicit quote from the Book of Enoch. Enoch, the 7th from Adam, also prophesied about them. "See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone, and to convict all the ungodly of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness, and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This quote comes directly from Enoch chapter 1, verses 9 to 10. The fact that Jude quotes this book and refers to it as prophecy suggests that he viewed the Book of Enoch as inspired, or at least as containing important spiritual truths. It shows the respect that some early Christian leaders had for the text. Beyond this direct quote, many other passages in the New Testament seem to echo ideas from the Book of Enoch. For instance, in 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 19-20, the apostle writes about Jesus, in which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison who disobeyed long ago, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. This idea of spirits in prison who were disobedient in Noah's time directly connects to the story of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, who were imprisoned for their rebellion before the flood. Peter seems to be aware of and accepting of this tradition. Likewise, in 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 to 5, we read, "For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah." Again, this description of sinful angels being cast into chains of darkness aligns perfectly with Enoch's narrative about the punishment of the watchers. We can even find parallels in the teachings of Jesus. For instance, when Jesus frequently referred to himself as the Son of Man, he may have been referencing not only the book of Daniel, but also the figure of the Son of Man described in the book of parables in Enoch, a pre-existent heavenly being who would judge the world at the end of time. In Matthew 19:28, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." This image of the Son of Man seated on a throne of glory to judge has striking parallels with the descriptions of the elect one, or Son of Man, found in the book of Enoch. The ideas about angels, demons, and final judgment that appear in the New Testament also show influences from Enochian thought. The concept of fallen angels led by Satan, who rebelled against God and now work to corrupt humanity, is very similar to the story of the Watchers. In Revelation 21:3, we read, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the abyss and a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore." This image of Satan being chained in an abyss recalls the punishment of the rebellious angels described in the book of Enoch. Many of the early church fathers were familiar with and even cited the book of Enoch. Tertullian, who lived around AD 200, considered the book to be inspired scripture. Clement of Alexandria and Origen also referred to it with respect. Even after the book ceased to be considered canonical by most Christians, its ideas continued to influence Christian thought on angels, demons, and the spiritual realm. After centuries of being known mainly to scholars and the Ethiopian church, the Book of Enoch regained attention in the modern world. It all began with the Scottish explorer James Bruce, who traveled to Ethiopia in 1773. Bruce brought back to Europe 3 copies of the book in Ge'ez, ancient Ethiopian. But it was not until 1821 that Professor Richard Lawrence published the first complete English translation. This translation caused a major stir in both academic and religious circles. Here was an ancient book that seemed to fill in key gaps in biblical stories and was, surprisingly, even quoted in the New Testament. Scholars began to recognize its significance for understanding the development of early Judaism and Christianity. Interest in the book grew even further in the 20th century, thanks to 2 important discoveries. First, in 1947, Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, confirming its antiquity and importance. Then in 1952, scholar J.T. Millick identified Greek fragments of the book during an excavation in Egypt. These discoveries sparked new translations and academic studies. In 1983, Professor E. Isaac produced a new translation from the Ethiopic text for the collection The Old Testament Pseudepigrapha. Since then, many other translations have appeared, making the book more accessible than ever before. One reason for the renewed fascination with the Book of Enoch is its dramatic narrative about the fallen angels. This tale of celestial beings who fall in love with human women, descend to earth, and share forbidden knowledge captures the imagination of many modern readers. In a world where supernatural stories are popular, Enoch's ancient account of the war between heavenly and earthly Forces resonates with a wide audience. The influence of the Book of Enoch can be seen in many aspects of contemporary popular culture. Elements of its story appear in movies, TV shows, novels, and comic books. When we encounter tales of rebellious angels, forbidden ancient knowledge, or cosmic battles between good and evil, we are often seeing echoes of traditions rooted in the Book of Enoch. For example, the name Azazel, one of the leaders of the fallen angels in Enoch, shows up as a demonic character in various modern films and books. The idea of the Watchers, celestial beings observing humanity, has been adapted into different forms in contemporary fiction, and the concept of the Son of Man as a divine judge has influenced countless artistic and literary representations of messianic figures. In theological circles, the Book of Enoch continues to spark debate about its relevance and authority. For most Christian denominations, it is not considered part of the biblical canon. In other words, it's not regarded as divinely inspired scripture on the same level as the Bible. Still, many theologians acknowledge its historical significance for understanding the context in which Christianity emerged. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church remains the only major Christian tradition that includes the Book of Enoch in its official canon. For millions of Ethiopian Christians, it is not merely an interesting ancient text, but sacred scripture containing divine revelation. Among other Christian groups, attitudes vary. Some see the book as containing valuable spiritual truths, even if not divinely inspired in the same way as the Bible. Others are more cautious, concerned about elements in the book that diverge from standard biblical theology. In the academic world, the historical importance of the Book of Enoch is widely recognized, regardless of religious questions about its authority. Scholars of Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity view the book as a crucial source for understanding the development of religious thought during that formative period. The Book of Enoch helps us better understand the context in which the New Testament was written. Concepts that appear briefly in the apostolic writings, like fallen angels, the Son of Man as divine judge, or the imprisoned spirits from the days of Noah, make more sense when read in light of the traditions found in Enoch, which were well known at the time. Furthermore, the book offers valuable insight into how Judaism evolved in the period between the Old and New Testaments. It shows how new ideas about angels, demons, resurrection, and the afterlife were taking shape, ideas that would later become central to both rabbinic Judaism and Christianity. In recent years, scholars have begun to reassess the historical significance of this ancient book. Rather than being dismissed as a marginal or obscure text, the Book of Enoch is now recognized as a key document for understanding the religious world from which both rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity emerged. For many modern readers, the fascination with the Book of Enoch goes beyond historical or theological interest. Its dramatic narrative, featuring cosmic forces in conflict, celestial beings interacting with humans, and apocalyptic visions, still resonates in an age where we seek to understand our place in the universe and the ultimate meaning of human history. If you found these ancient stories as compelling as we did, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share this video with friends and family who are also interested in biblical stories and ancient texts. Every share helps these powerful narratives reach more people. Want to keep exploring the mysteries hidden between the lines of the Bible? Stories of extraordinary characters, lost books, and long-forgotten secrets? Then don't miss our upcoming videos. Subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new biblical story drops. Leave a comment below and tell us what stood out most to you about the Book of Enoch. Was it the story of the Watcher angels, the celestial visions, or maybe the influence this book had on Christianity? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey. See you in the next biblical story.